You are alone, surrounded, and completely at my mercy.
Then you should probably give me 10 minutes.
The mining station on Kepler 9 had no name anymore. The crew that built it had called it Ironhold. The Kreth'Vai, who now circled it like wolves around a dying fire, called it something that translated loosely to the place where the small ones wait to be collected. Sergeant Darian Cole called it Tuesday. He was on his third consecutive shift, running diagnostics on a pressure seal that had no business still functioning when the proximity alarm stopped being a drill. Darian was 34 years old, 6'2" of corded muscle and operational calm, built by a decade in the Colonial Defense Force and refined by 2 years surviving on a station that the CDF had quietly stopped resupplying. He had a jaw that looked like it had been quarried from something, eyes the color of old steel, and the particular kind of stillness that men develop when they've been afraid so many times the feeling stops being an event and starts being background noise. He was the only human left on Ironhold. The other 11 crew members had been evacuated 6 weeks ago when the Kreth'Vai expansion fleet had entered the sector. Darian had stayed behind to finish decommissioning the reactor, a process that, if abandoned incorrectly, would contaminate the surrounding asteroid belt for 3 centuries. The CDF had said it would take him 4 days. It had taken 6 weeks. No one had come back for him. The Kreth'Vai had arrived instead. Their ships, long, black, and organic-looking, like the bones of some enormous creature stripped of flesh, had been holding position just beyond weapons range for 11 days. Watching, waiting. In Kreth'Vai culture, making prey understand its situation before collection was considered a form of respect. Darian had spent those 11 days finishing the reactor decommission. He was almost done. The boarding party came through the docking bay like a controlled storm. 12 Kreth'Vai warriors in full ceremonial armor, 7 feet tall, their exoskeletons layered in iridescent black chitin that served as both cultural display and combat protection. Their weapons were already drawn, not because they expected resistance, because they always drew weapons when collecting lesser species. It was tradition. It was theater. At the center of the formation walked Empress-Designate Zharr'Keth. She was the daughter of the Kreth'Vai High Warlord and the commanding officer of this expansion fleet. She was also, by every measurable standard in the known galaxy, one of the most physically formidable beings alive, 8 feet of alien predator wrapped in ceremonial battleplate, her 4 upper limbs moving with the liquid precision of a creature that had never once in its life needed to be afraid of anything it could see. She had come personally because her intelligence reports described the single remaining human as a curiosity, a creature too stubborn or too foolish to flee. She wanted to see it with her own eyes. What she saw stopped her at the doorway. Darian didn't look up from the panel he was working on. Sparks fell across his shoulders. The reactor housing behind him was open, the entire thermal exchange array exposed. A working environment so dangerous that 3 of the 12 warriors immediately stepped backward without being ordered to. "Human," Zharr'Keth said, in trade standard. "You will submit for processing." Darian turned a bolt 1/4 turn. "Give me 10 minutes." The room went rigid with shock. Behind the Empress-Designate, a warrior raised his weapon. She stopped him with one hand without looking at him, her eyes fixed on the human who had just told her to wait. "You are alone," she said. "You are outmatched. You are unarmed. You will submit now." Darian finally looked up. His eyes moved across 12 armed warriors, across the Empress-Designate herself, across the weapons pointed at the center of his chest. Then he looked back at the panel. "Reactors at 87% decommission," he said, completely calm. "If I stop now, the thermal coupling fails in about 40 minutes. That vent stack points directly at your primary docking umbilical." He picked up a different tool. "So you can shoot me, or you can give me 10 minutes. Your call, but I decide fast." Silence. Zharr'Keth stared at him for a very long moment. Then she held up her fist, and every weapon in the room lowered. She watched him work. That was the part her warriors would never understand. Not the tactical decision to wait, which was merely logical, but the fact that she moved closer, that she stood 2 meters away from this single human creature and watched his hands move across systems that would have killed any of her warriors through sheer unfamiliarity, and felt something shift in her chest that her culture had a word for, but her pride had never personally required. Vethanar, roughly translated, the recognition of a worthy force. He worked without hurry and without waste. Every movement deliberate. Every decision made from a foundation of absolute competence and zero performance. He was not trying to impress her. He was not afraid of her. He was simply finishing a job that needed finishing in a room full of people who wanted to take him prisoner because the job mattered and nothing else in that moment mattered more. At the 9-minute mark, the reactor housing sealed with a clean hydraulic hiss. Darian stood, rolled his shoulder once, looked at the readout, green across every indicator, and nodded to himself the way a man nods when the universe has confirmed what he already knew. Then he looked at Zharr'Keth. "Done," he said. She said, in a voice that carried the full weight of her station and something else entirely, "You will come with us." "Yeah, I figured." He set the tool down. "As a prisoner?" "No." Her 4 eyes studied him with an intensity that made her warriors shift uncomfortably. In Kreth'Vai culture, there is a designation for one who demonstrates Vethanar before a ranking commander. She paused, and if Zharr'Keth, Empress-Designate of the 6th Expansion Fleet, had ever paused before in her life, no one present had witnessed it. "I am designating you as a candidate for bonded consort." The room did not breathe. Darian looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked around at 12 heavily armed alien warriors who were all, somehow, looking at the floor. Then back at her. "I want that in writing," he said. "In my own quarters." The formal documentation took 3 hours. Darian sat at the head of a Kreth'Vai treaty table, a position that no human, no non-Kreth'Vai of any species had ever occupied, and read every line of the consort designation with the same methodical attention he'd given the reactor decommission. He crossed out 4 clauses, added 2, requested a translation review on a 3rd. Zharr'Keth, chief legal officer, looked as though he might be having a medical event. Zharr'Keth herself watched from the commander's seat with an expression that her warriors had never seen on her face before and would spend years arguing about afterward. The closest word in their language was satisfied. The closest word in any human language was delighted. When Darian finally signed, he set the stylus down and looked across the table at the most powerful military commander in the sector. "1 condition," he said. "You've already added 2 conditions. This is a different kind." His voice was even. "Ironhold and every human colonial station in this sector gets a non-aggression designation. Permanent. Filed with the Galactic Registry." Silence stretched across the room like a hell breath. Zharr'Keth leaned forward very slowly. "You are negotiating with me right now?" "Yes." Another silence. Then something happened in her 4 eyes that might, in a human face, have been the beginning of a smile. She signed. Darian looked at the document for a moment. At 11 colonial stations that would wake up tomorrow under the protection of the Kreth'Vai 6th Fleet, because one man had stayed behind to finish a job and refused to be impressed by anything that wasn't competence. He picked up the stylus, put it in his chest pocket. "We didn't come to the stars to be collected," he said quietly. "We came to negotiate."